Hey, everybody, we're back again for another look at the movies. Today, we're looking at Al Pacino, one of the most decorated actors of the last 50 years. Just running through his accolades here: 9 Oscar nominations, 1 win. He's won 2 Tony Awards, 2 Emmy Awards, 19 Golden Globe nominations, and 4 Golden Globes. So that tells you pretty much what the industry thinks of Al Pacino. Today I'm joined by JJ, 22 Explosive Hits. Great channel, check him out. AYBL Maine, Brian, just went over 2,000 subscribers, doing a fantastic job. So check him out as well. Doc is here, our regular movie contributor, and we're going to take a look at the legendary Al Pacino. Top 10 movies. I'm sure there'll be some personal favorites in here. We'll hit some honorable mentions as we go. JJ, we're going to do numbers 10 through 6. Well, our order today will be JJ, Doc, Brian, and myself. So JJ, lead it off.
Okay. The first film that I chose by Mr. Al Pacino is the movie Insomnia. I love his performance in that one. It is a incredible performance. And it's one of those stories I know is a remake of a Norwegian film, but directed by Chris Nolan, who also is obviously popular for the Dark Knight series and yeah. But what made that film so compelling to me was his gripping performance of this guy that can't get any sleep. He's corrupt, and all that he went through to try to prove this guy, and he's chasing, and he's like half losing it as the whole movie. You just watch this guy kind of really fall apart, and he was Rob Williams in there plays the serial killer as well, but his performance in there to me was just mind bending in the way he was. You just kind of felt it. He started out up here, just kind of went down the entire movie, and it was really well done. My number 9 is And Justice for All. I'm a big big fan of this film, directed by Norman Jewison. Him defending a judge, and him wanting justice for everybody else in the film. Have to say, I mean, the ending monologue is what grips me in there. I mean, you're out of order. We're all out of order. This whole courtroom's out of order. Oh my God. I mean, I remember seeing that when I was even a kid, and I've been over and over again. That performance has always stuck with me personally. And I think it definitely ranks in my top 10 of his performances. My number 8 is one of the ones that he got an Oscar nomination for. It would be Glengarry Glen Ross. I'm a big fan of this movie. Personally, I'm a fan of this movie because I did sell cars for 5 years, and it had a lot to do with sales. They made us watch it in one of our sales meetings to motivate us ahead of time, the whole Alec Baldwin thing. But what's interesting enough to me, and why it strikes is that he played the part of the guy. And it's in every sales office, in every place I've ever worked, there's a superstar salesman who is in the office and is given the primo leads, has the primo stuff, and he is always kind of above everybody else. That's the part that he played, and it was really well done because it looked like everybody else in the film was going this way. It was, pretty much an ensemble cast, but where he stuck out so much to me in this movie was, he was going after the big guy. He had it all lined up. He gets these guys on a regular basis. And then he gets this manager in the end that he just tells him off. And I love that scene so much. When he gets that guy out of the room, he's like, "Oh yeah, I've cashed your check," with Jonathan Price. He's like, "What?" And then he goes off on that monologue, with every other F-bomb in it possible. Yeah. But it's oh my God, it's compelling. Okay, so the next one, I'm moving on to more F-bombs. Scarface was my number 7. Scarface is a great role of his that I remember. This film, he really takes you into this character in a way at that time and period. If you watch his films throughout, it was something that he really never really conquered before, as far as being an actor. As far as he took on this whole persona of the Cuban immigrant who comes over, and during the whole, I remember the whole, they had refugee store up here and everything else, but that whole thing where he descends into the underworld, and he's actually living it up in the underworld and becoming better and better in that world, and becoming awesome at what he does. But then he becomes a victim of his own self, and once he actually kind of gets some morals at one point in the movie is when everything starts to go down for him, actually. And so then, he has that, that famous ending scene with him being, shot up and the way he goes down in a blaze of glory. Apparently they say rumors that Steven Spielberg directed that part. That's what I've heard. He directed that part of that little shot in that film. I've heard that as a rumor as well. But that scene with him with the coke and then going after, and the scene when he finds his daughter, his sister with the other guy.
Right.
Amazing. Just amazing how that scene alone too, when they would show his eyes and the emotion, they went into that shot about 4 or 5 times in the film where they would go into his eyes and he had this piercing look in his eyes, and then something would transform and change in him. And number 6 that I picked on my list is Donnie Brasco. Donnie Brasco is a great performance. Him playing the lefty. Now he's playing a mob guy in this one, but what's really amazing about this is that you watch this mob guy who's kind of on the edge of the mob. He's a made guy, but he's on the edge of everything, and he's bringing this other guy into this whole ordeal. And he really, looks up to this guy, and he really wants to bring him in, take Donnie under his wing, and in how you watch this character, and once he finds out what actually is going down, he knows what his fate is, and to watch him, you just feel for this guy. That's the best way I can put it, is that when I watched that movie, I really felt for this character. But this is a guy that you would, again, not really want to like because he's part of the mafia, everything else, but you really felt for this guy and how you didn't really, it's a character that was criminally based, but you didn't want him to die, and you didn't want him to go down, and you really felt for him. And I thought that's where Al took it to that next level that he always does when he performs. So that's my 10 through 6.
Excellent. Great job.
Very good.
I like those picks. What do you got, Doc?
Well, my number 10 is going to sound a lot like JJ's number 10. So I don't know how this goes. So I've got Insomnia at number 10 as well for me. To your point, JJ, it's a very compelling the fall for this character here that he starts off. He's coming in as the guy who's going to be the savior here that's going to solve this case that's going on and stuff like this, and he just goes, it does a 180 right out of the gate, and it's all on him, and he's in the whole movie, man. It's one of these movies again where he's fantastic in it. He's the driving force behind it. Robin Williams is, in the movie and stuff like that, but it's a real secondary kind of character as it unfolds. So his character is really seedy, and it just goes down a really bad spot, and he just makes the wrong choices all these times, kind of thing, as it goes, kind of thing. So he thinks he's finding his way out even as he's making these turns, and it's not really going that way.
It's getting him further into it.
He's digging a deeper hole as he goes, man. So
exactly,
and he thinks he's getting out. So yeah, Insomnia is my number 10 for Pacino. My number 9, another mobster one here, I guess, in one sense, but I've gone Carlito's Way.
Nice.
Good choice.
Yeah, this is this is the one that wants out, right? He wants out of the mob and stuff like this in this movie. So he's done his time in the back and everything else. And Sean Penn, his lawyer's gotten him off on some different things, and now he really wants out, and he thinks he's found his way out, and he gets pulled back in for like the wrong reasons, even, by family and everything else. And as it unfolds throughout this whole movie, he just wants to go clean, and he just can't go clean, and he gets pulled further in deeper and deeper as he goes on the other side for different reasons. And those reasons are Sean Penn, but who's also fantastic in this movie. So, I just love both of them in this movie. Sean Penn's fantastic in this flick, man.
Oh,
yeah. Carlito's Way is a top 10 Pacino flick for me anyway. So that comes in at number 9 for me with Pacino, especially the ending. So
yeah.
Number 8 for me is The Insider. It's another one. It's another Russell Crowe and him in this one here. So it's not like, a Michael Mann movie, so we've talked about this before. Buckle in, because it's not over in 2 hours, that's for sure. So
bring a lunch day for the day.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So But it's a great story. He's really good as for 6 minutes. You're trying to unfold the story about tobacco and being sued, and they want to go ahead with the story. And actually, the supporting cast outside of Russell Crowe and Christopher Plummer's pretty good in this as well. More than pretty good. He's really good in this for the scenes that he's in too. So, in The Insider, some truth to the story as well. Not everything in the story is true, but enough of it to make the story a true story based on a lot of these things. So, and why they would or would not actually air Russell Crowe ratting out the tobacco companies on what actually they do and don't know about causing cancer with people that smoke. Right. And they're trying to wash their hands of it, but, go buy another carton. So not anymore for me. So, but Insider is a great flick. So I don't know if he was nominated for this one or not. Crow might have been. I don't know if he was.
I think Crow was.
I think it was Crow.
Yeah, Crow was.
Was Crow?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he gained a bunch of weight for it.
It was the Best Picture nominee. I know it was up for Best Picture too.
Yeah, it's a great flick, man. Just a really good flick. So that's my number 8. My number 7, JJ, you've already had this one. And you might have had it here too as well. So mine's Scarface as well. This is what I grew up with, and it's maybe the personal side of me and everything else, but I love this flick as well. So you're right, the rise of a Cuban immigrant here and what he has to do to actually he gets into the wrong or maybe the right business for him, because this guy's pretty devious and pretty seedy anyway to start off as a character anyway. So him and his buddy getting out and doing what they got to do to climb the corrupt ladder, I guess. And let's face it, Al Pacino's character here, man, really did not hold bards on who was in his way when he was climbing that ladder anyway. So,
Yep.
I'll tell you, F. Murray Abrams there, man, never thought he'd go for a helicopter ride like that. I'll tell you that. But you don't mess with the Colombians. That's the bottom line. So, just a great performance. Some iconic scenes in this movie, and it's I know Oliver Stone can be a little polarizing at times too. That writing and directing and different things, but this is De Palma doing a Stone movie, and to me, it's one of the classics, especially in this era for sure. So, Scarface is number 7 for me. And my number 6, going back to Michael Mann, going with Heat. It's another one he's been talking about. It's the ultimate cops and robbers movie, man. This is another one. Buckle in. It's 3 hours. Get ready, and it's De Niro. And like I said, this cast in this one, we've talked about this movie on a couple of maybe another video as well. But supporting cast, I think Val Kilmer's freaking fantastic in this movie as well. But when you get Pacino and De Niro in a movie like this, man, it's well worth your time to watch a flick like this. This
doesn't disappoint.
No, doesn't.
This is one that's got everything kind of covered. Really well written. The acting's top notch, and
some of the shootouts too are phenomenal. The choreographed
shootout in the street, man. That's an iconic scene, man. That's a fantastic scene. One of the better shootouts you'll see in a flick. I'll tell you that.
I think so too.
Oh yeah. And Val Kilmer too is amazing.
Val Kilmer's awesome in that movie. Fantastic. Heat's a top 10 Pacino flick for me, man.
Absolutely. All right, great list. Love it. What do you got, Brian? Anything similar?
Yeah, I'm sure. Feel like we're beating a dead horse here, but I've got Insomnia at number 10 as well.
Oh my God.
Because I just didn't know.
Just for our viewers out there, we do not do notes.
Yeah, really. I
didn't know whether it was going to make it in or not. So when I rewatched it again, it felt a lot darker to me this last time that I watched it than I gave it credit for the first time. I know that's kind of ironic considering where it was actually taking place. It wasn't very dark ever. But he did do a good job. And as someone who hasn't, I have insomnia too, but mine's mostly pain related. I can tell you what a physically taxing and mentally taxing thing it is to not get sleep on a regular basis and the things it can do to you. And I don't know, for some, I'm looking at his character, I'm going, wow. I said, I would be hard pressed knowing the things that he has done to actually decide who's the worst villain in this film whether it's him or whether it's Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, that's how terrible his character is. I mean, a totally corrupt cop who like goes up there. He's being investigated by Internal Affairs and then ends up killing a cop that's going to testify against him inadvertently, but nobody's going to believe that.
No.
And so then he just makes it worse by trying to cover it up. And, I always look at, when I think about movies like this, it's like, if you are a good guy or a bad guy, but if you at least have a code and you have a way of doing things, as long as you don't break that mode, you will be okay. But as soon as you start breaking that mode and in your own rules, that's when your downfall comes. It always does in the movies anyway. So I got that at number 10. Number 9, I've got Carlito's Way. Doc's already touched upon that. It's funny. I mean, it's just, some of these, this rose to the top for me. I thought Sean Penn's character was great as well as his lawyer, that, and basically it's him who drags him back into the mess again. First starting as innocently as, can you get me just, get me a gun, and then can you get someone to watch over me, and then before you know it, Carlito's all knee deep in it again because of him, and then of course, like most things, in the end, it's usually your best friend that's going to be the one that gets you.
Right. And
of course, that's exactly what happened in Carlito's Way, is ends up being somebody he trusts that actually takes him out. So that's number 9 for me. Number 8 is Glenn Ross. I think the cast in this is just just straight up banging cast. I mean, everybody, Baldwin, Spacey, I think was Arkin nominated in this. I know that Lemon was. Yeah, and Pacino it's got Ed Harris, and then it's got Ricky Roma was Al Pacino's character. And you're right. Yep. I've worked in sales too, JJ, and it's always that one guy that's always on top of his game in every office, and he's always the one who's leading the pack and everything. And what was funny about that character is like it wasn't a huge character, but it was a huge personality in the office. So that's why, I thought that he still deserved some credit, and that's why I put it this high for Glenn Ross. I thought his personality was huge. In a cast like that, for his character to still stick out, I thought you have to be top notch. So number 7 for me, I've got Sea of Love. I know this one's a little different. For some reason, I've always liked this movie, and maybe a little bit for Ellen Barkin in the movie.
A little bit, yeah.
Mostly, but some of the sex scenes in it are pretty steamy. So but I liked it. I mean, I liked it a lot, as he's this detective, and he's trying to work this case where there's like these person who's putting out personal ads where they rhyme and everything, and Ellen Barkin's going out on these dates, and of course everybody thinks it's Ellen Barkin that's actually killing all these guys, and ends up being, spoiler alert, ends up being her husband that's actually just kind of following her around off and all these dudes, after he makes them play out the sexual things that happen for them. And it's just an odd movie, but it was a wonderful movie to watch again, and I just recently rewatched it. So number 6 for me is Scarface. I put that one for me. I don't know. I mean, I loved it as a kid. When I watched it again recently, I didn't love it as much, but it's still good enough to make my top 10. The cast overall is this great. As it's Stephen Bayer is his best friend, Manny, right? He plays Manny.
Yep.
And it's got F. Murray Abraham. It's got Frank Logia in it. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yep.
Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio was his sister.
That's
absolute
right.
knockout. I mean, it's a great cast. But for some reason, it didn't have for some reason, when I was a kid, maybe I was just kind of hyped into the violence of it as a little bit more than I was now as an adult. When I watched it this last time around, there were some really iconic scenes in it, but at the same time, I thought the drama narrative of his life was much more interesting than the violence. And I know that it seemed like the violence was the thing that everybody remembered about the movie. But I think Doc that touched upon it about his eyes, or did JJ touch about his eyes?
JJ.
Yeah, JJ said something about that, and it's true. It's like every time that something was going to go bad, it's like they just zoom, all of a sudden you're just zooming in on the eyes, and he just has this Pacino can have this vacant look in his eyes, and that's probably the scariest thing you're going to run into, is that vacant expression that he had in that movie. That was much more scary than any of the weapons that he would brandish against you. So Scarface makes it number 6.
Well, similar to my list. I have one different that nobody's touched on, and the rest is just going to cover the same ground. Number 10 is one of his first movies, Panic in Needle Park. He plays a junkie in New York City, 1971. It's basically the day in, day out existence of a junkie. I mean, they're looking for their next fix. It's bleak, it's despairing, very realistic, right on the streets of New York. Locations are great. It looks like New York City in the 70s. I mean, they're filming right on the street. And I don't know whether they used real people for extras, but these people look legit, like they were strung out, copping their next little bag of heroin. And it's just in your face. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty to look at. But if you like realistic movies like I do, I had to put it on the list. And that was at the expense of some clearly better, more competent films. But I knew you guys would pick up the slack. So I wanted to put Panic in Needle Park in my number 10 spot.
So you read that right. It didn't say Insomnia on your list, right? I'm just checking.
Number 9, Sea of Love, which Brian hit on. It's an intense, sexy thriller. Ellen Barkin, like I said, we talked about this before. She doesn't have that, glamour girl face or anything like that, but there's something evocative and sexy about her presence on screen. And the chemistry she had with Pacino really lit some fireworks here. And like Brian said, it's a detective movie. They're investigating the case of a man who was murdered with the record playing Sea of Love. And when they come into the apartment, and they put an ad in the Lonely Hearts Club section of the newspaper trying to lure somebody in, and Ellen Barkin answers the ad, so they think she could be the one, and they start acting out this sexual chemistry, and he's got a gun in his pocket, and it's really intense the way they filmed it. So I don't want to give away the ending, although Brian may have already, but it's a sexy thriller, and that's all right. We're allowed to do that. Number 8 is one that you guys all had at number 10. I put it at number 8. That's Insomnia. Chris Nolan, a classic. I've watched this at least 5 or 6 times now. It's one that I look for little things in the movie every time I see it. I love the fact that it's shot in Alaska. That's a whole other character here. With the daytime all the time. He's closing the blinds and trying to find a way to get some shut eye. And you can read his face. He's got all his emotion is shown in his face. This is Al Pacino's acting style, as you talked about in Scarface even. But Insomnia, you can see the weathered look. It looks like he didn't sleep for a week when he made this film. It's very, very, it's obvious. And I like the Robin Williams villain character too. I think he's pretty good in the role. I always liked Hilary Swank here as the sort of naive detective trying to learn the ropes. She sort of idolizes Al at the beginning of the movie, and then she starts digging and finds out that he's not the guy who she thinks he is, and there's some corruption there being investigated by the Internal Affairs. The whole shootout with the partner, which may or may not have been. There's some fog there, literally some fog as to whether it was intentional or not. And then Hillary comes up with a pristine bullet and all this other stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in this movie. It's a great movie. I really enjoy it. Number 7 is Heat. Doc had it. Michael Mann, epic, classic shootout, cat and mouse. You got the De Niro, Pacino head on talking at the restaurant, and then later the shootout at the end. Lots of character development here too, in their personal lives, about the women they're dating, and their relationships.
Val Kilmer's wife, man, she was like Lady Macbeth.
There's that kind of drama here. All those guys have their
Exactly.
They separate their the little relationship stuff and the stuff they do for business, which is crime. I enjoy that. It takes 3 hours to tell this story, literally, because there's attention to detail, and that's what Michael Mann gives you in a film. Doesn't disappoint at all. Number 6, we've all had it, I think, and that's Scarface.
Mhm.
You know, this is just unbelievable. The Cuban drug kingpin, Tony Montana, say hello to my little friend. You know, it's all the taglines. Just good. He's got a mountain of coke that he's involved. Remember the coke scene where he's
Oh
just,
yeah.
Yeah.
oh my God, it
Oh,
looked like a pile of mashed potatoes from Close Encounters. It was huge. He comes up, he's got coke all over his
Yeah.
face. And
And when his sister
uh,
walked in, I was like, yeah, I might need some of that Coke as well.
yeah, there's that whole dynamic with his sister.
Yeah,
It's sort of
Oh, yeah.
incestuous in a
it is.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he's jealous of his best friend because he's having sexual relations with his sister, and it just shows blood's thicker than water, I guess. I don't know. And the violence, it's ultra violent, it's over the top. The chainsaw scene in the shower,
Oh,
that is brutal.
Brutal.
Brutal. The shootout at the mansion where you know it all goes down at the end. He must have
yeah.
taken 500 bullets in that scene.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't know Spielberg had helped in the direction, but that's interesting. It's a good tidbit.
Yeah.
But this is just classic 80s over the top violence. I mean, and at the time, it's a good combination though. You have Brian De Palma with his style, and you got Oliver Stone with his, you know, with his own writing and stuff, and
Yeah.
they create forces here and make this classic movie. And I think it's better on the second watch. I'm a lot like Brian. I didn't think much of it early on when I first saw it, but as the years go by, it's quite an interesting gangster movie. So got to give it its props. It comes in at number 6 for me. I just want to mention one thing before we get back to JJ. That's The Insider. That's the movie I left off because I only saw it once.
Yeah.
And it just didn't grab me. I know it's a well acclaimed, well thought out movie. Critics loved it, but I just I need to go back and rewatch it because it probably should be on my list. It's about an important subject too, so I just wanted to hit on that. It was an honorable mention for me. All right, JJ, we're going to go back to you for our 5 through 2.
Okay. My number 5 is The Insider.
Tell us about it.
His performance in here was just unbelievable. How he was just bringing on this guy and keeping him in line and just keeping him going, and the way he did the performance, and then having to juggle it, with his own broadcasters, and then we did to go through with Crow, and then that whole thing that you think you got him, then you don't, and then you got to keep reeling him back in again.
Right.
It was kind of the main story of that one, and I just think his performance in there was just outstanding. I mean, it was one that always just goes out to me as far as it being one of his greats. My number 4 is Serpico. With him playing the story of Frank Serpico, a corrupt cop. You really kind of what I love about this movie is that he's really a one-man show in this whole thing. It feels like everybody is against him, and everybody, to take on the true story of this character that you really had to probably put up with, but how Al Pacino portrays it is just amazing about how he. And I just remember all those scenes when he keeps saying, I got to go and face these guys again, and I got to go and face all the other cops, and what he goes through in that is just, to me, is just really compelling. Okay, my number 3 is Dog Day Afternoon. Attica. The story of this one is amazing, and you have to consider the time period when he took on this story. It was really, 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 almost way ahead of its time when you think about the subject matter of this movie. Yeah. And they hit it head on, and I was like, he didn't, he didn't hold back as far as wanting. The whole reason why he was robbing this place was to get the operation for his boyfriend. And here he is, he's this married guy, and he's trying to rob this bank, and he fumbles the whole thing and going through it, and he's just like, it's almost like making it up as he goes along. One of the guys he was with backs out on him, and then him and the other guy have to kind of run the whole show, and it's just a great a great film, a great character development on his part to kind of put a magnifying glass on this one section that happened in there. And the way that, you know, he, in the movie, I just thought it was, again, just really ahead of his time, but with him getting the sex operation and everything else.
Yeah.
And my number 2 is The Godfather, with him as Michael Corleone. What can I say about that role? He, in the first Godfather movie, it's really a journey we take with him going up. Well, he's kind of the outsider. He's the good boy. He's the one that's not going to be involved in the mafia and not going to be involved in the family business and not going to be a part of it. And then he goes, you know, because, you know, once this incident happens with his dad, and his dad is and then he basically tells his dad he's with him, and he then, you know, murders the guy, and we kind of follow him, you know, on through Sicily, and then that whole, just to watch the transformation. If you watch the opening of Michael to the end of Michael,
Right,
it's two different people, but it makes it so compelling, and so that, you know, he's now part of this new world, and then he's bringing us all in. So that's my number 2 would be Godfather, first one.
very strong. Like it. What do you got, Doc?
Well, hang on a second there, JJ. I'll catch up to you in a second. Okay. So my number 5 is Glenn Ross. I love this movie, man. And Brian and JJ, you've both touched on already, you know, the sales aspect of this movie and stuff like this, but and the ensemble cast and everything else that goes with it. But yeah, Pacino. This is probably the movie he swears the most in his whole career, probably.
Yeah.
I love everything about this movie, the script, the settings, everything, the acting. This movie is pretty close to a 10 out of 10 for me, man. This movie is right up there. This is, you want a good movie, go watch this flick, man. This is, you're into it, and you're into it heavy. The story behind it, you know, I can't talk enough about the supporting cast in this, because there's not much of a supporting cast. They're all fantastic actors here, man. This is, and they're kind of like at peaks almost in one sense, you know. Kevin Spacey's kind of like coming into his own here, and Alec Baldwin, for what he's in it, you know, steals the scenes when he's in it. Right. Ed Harris is great, you know. Alan Arkin's fantastic in this movie. Jack Lemmon, I mean, this is, and you got Pacino, man. So you know, how's that go? Glenn Ross, you know, it's the top 5 Pacino for me, man. So that's number 5. And number 4 sounds like JJ's number 4. Sounds like Serpico to me too, man. So yeah, and what a character for him to play. You're right, Frank Serpico. It's he's up against it every time he walks into the door or walks out on the street with one of his partners, and you know, he's almost looking to get stabbed in the back. He just doesn't know what's he knows it's coming. It's just a matter of when it's going to get there, kind of thing, almost eventually. Right. So just because he's got a little bit more morals than the rest of the gang that's going on, you know, getting paid on the undercut on the other side, and he's not in on it. So, you know, the riding out scenario and everything else, he's playing with fire with his job in one sense, but he knows he's doing the right thing, but he knows the consequences of doing it as well. So, but he doesn't care. That's who he is. That's who he plays. Serpico is a fantastic character and an awesome flick for Pacino. So that's my number 4 as well, JJ. So good call there, buddy.
Very good.
Number 3. Sounds a lot like JJ's number 3 to me too. So it is Dog Day. And you touched on it here, JJ, and I've touched on this before when we did this as well. So yeah, this movie is miles and miles ahead of what's actually happening in movies at this time. And to hit this head on, like you mentioned, JJ, it's the big one. The best way to put it, you know, this character is not. This is not a Hollywood character here, man. This is real person. This is real life, and this is somebody who's just, you know, doing what he can to make everything right in his life, and he thinks he's doing the right thing for his boyfriend and his wife. He doesn't just giving it, you know. Let's face it, this is when the Junk is all story starts here too, because he's going to go for a run here. So, and what a supporting actor he is in this movie as well. Dog Day Afternoon, man's a classic, especially for the era and everything else. And you know, it's early in Pacino's career, and I think we even talked about it before, Brian, when we brought this movie up. it'd be interesting to know if, and I still don't know, I never researched that part, but it'd be interesting to know, did they go to Pacino and say, listen, I've got this movie, are you in? And then they took it to the studio, or vice versa. Like, you know, they went to the studio and said, I got this movie and we're going to go get Pacino. Well, I don't know which way it went with that, but either way, it turned into a, you know, a classic. So Dog Days number 3. Number 2 is number 1. The Godfather number 1 is number 2 for me. So the planting of the seeds of Michael Corleone here is what he turns into in 2's, you know, for Pacino's movies, 2's my favorite Pacino movie. Then might not be the best movie in the series. I probably like Godfather is a better movie, but for Pacino, I'm taking 1 because he doesn't have a massive role in one sense in this movie, but the introduction of Michael and everything that goes with it, and the family interaction, and Michael, you know, James Caan, and, you know, Duvall and all these guys, and obviously Brando, who I still wish was in it more. So The Godfather Part One, another classic. It's an iconic character that's been with us here for 50 years now. And this was the introduction of it. And it's my number 2 Pacino, man.
Unbelievable. I agree wholeheartedly with both you guys so far. Brian, what do you have?
Okay, at number 5 for me, I've got Donnie Brasco. I liked his role as a Lefty, the maid guy, but you kind of get the sense very early on that Lefty is pretty much maxed out at how high he's already climbed in the mafia. That's as far as he's going to go. I mean, he's his own worst enemy. For all of his vices have basically limited his upward mobility within the family. And what I did like about it was they did still present him as very much a very loving father figure, you know, even to Donnie, and a very loving husband. And I like how I like at the end of the movie where basically he's resided to his fate, and he just basically just acts like it's like just another day. He kisses his wife goodbye and tells her that he'll see her later, and he goes off to his fate. He knows that it's the end for him. He understands that, and I liked him in the movie. I thought it's a movie I can watch over and over again just so I can hear the 15 things about what forget about it could be. You know, I gotta watch it just because I'm writing them down. What the hell? But, number 4 for me, I've got Scent of a Woman here at number 4. I know a lot of people, you know, might even have this number 1 or very high on their list. For me, if it wasn't for the fact that Chris O'Donnell was in it, it probably would be much higher. I'm just never been a fan of that kid for some reason. He always felt like he drug movies down to me, every movie I've ever seen. But there's no doubt about it that Pacino's character in it it's him at the top of his game. It's an iconic role for him. Very, very powerful presence. Every scene that he's in, he carries a lot of weight in those scenes. So he deserves all the accolades in the world for this role. So he basically carried that movie. I mean, other than him, I did of course like the supporting role that Philip Seymour Hoffman had. He's very young in that movie, but other than that, Pacino carried the movie. I mean, you can't rely on Chris to do it. So number 3 for me, I've got Heat This High.
Wow.
I really do like Heat, though. I think that there's so much more than just a bank robbery. And I'll go right back to the thing about everybody who holds on to their moral way of doing things or their code, they survive. And those who break it, they always pay the price for it. And that's the case even in this movie. I mean, right toward the end where, hey, listen, if he would just cut and run, at the end there, De Niro's character, he would have survived that, survived the whole thing, but he didn't. He decided to go back. And then of course he runs into Pacino's character who's sticking by his code, and it ends badly for De Niro's character. So we'll talk about 2 opposing forces, 2 juggernaut characters coming together in this film. And I love the film, and I'll swear to this day, I'll still call Ashley Judd Lady Macbeth to the end, because man, she had Val Kilmer just on a string, man, just telling him, she had total control of that situation. That was awful. So number 2 for me, which I think is his best acting role. It didn't make number one, and we'll go into the reason for it later. But I think his best acting role was in Dog Day Afternoon. That's just my personal opinion. I got it at number two. I thought for him to even take on that role, considering how much how much credibility he had in Hollywood, is a very risky role for him to take. I mean, there was a lot of taboo issues in that film that he jumped right into, and I think he smoked it. I mean, that role, he just absolutely smoked it. He did a fantastic job in it, and I like the whole Attica thing. I think that's like one of the most highly quoted movie scenes ever.
Yeah.
Is that it's just that particular scene? I'm like, and I think it's because the Attica prison riots happened just about that same time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think that's what he was kind of alluding to when he actually did that particular scene. So
I think it was an ad lib. I think he ad libbed that particular scene.
Right.
Wow.
Based on the news that was going on about Attica at that time. That's my understanding anyway.
Wow. It was, and also that he worked for the character as well, because I always thought it worked because he was distracting the crowd from what was really going on as well.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, has anybody ever seen a bank robbery go to plan? I mean, really?
No.
How many times how's it going to go to plan? Are you really going to get a helicopter out of there? Are you really going to get a plane out of there? That's never gonna, I don't understand people anymore. So, but
also in that film, I also in that film I like James Broderick's performance as well, as just being so stoic with him, and that was he is very, very compelling in that film.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my number two, Dog Day Afternoon. I had it really high, I understand, but I thought it was his best performance as an actor.
Yeah, I agree with you on the best performance. I don't have it number two. I don't think there's any doubt it's his best performance, but we all have our opinions. My number five is one that I think JJ had earlier, and Justice for All. Was that you?
Yep.
Wow.
I love this film. This is sort of a mockery of the whole court system. Let's make a deal. He's gone because the good guys are going to jail and the bad guys are getting out in a lot of cases, and they're cutting deals behind scenes. The judge is corrupt. He's on trial for being a rapist, basically, and he picks Al Pacino to defend him. The judge, played by John Forsythe, and the whole system is out of order. And Al Pacino lets you know how out of order it is in that climactic scene. You got Jack Warden, who's almost suicidal. He's out on the ledge with a gun, with a pistol.
That's great.
I love that scene.
Yeah, a great cast. You got Christine Lottie, who's the girlfriend, another lawyer here. She's excellent too. And some of the lesser characters are over the top. Craig T. Nelson's in it. Jeffrey Tambor's in it. They're all wackadoos and doing their own thing. They're throwing plates, and it's just a mess. And Al Pacino's great in this movie. I think he's fantastic. He goes wild again with the facial contortions, with the eyes bulging, and you're out of order. He's just screaming his guts out to make a point. It's like a circus atmosphere, is what I'm getting at. My number four is Serpico. You guys had it at four. About police corruption, a true life story here of a cop who refuses to take the money from the bad guys. He's sort of a lone wolf within the system. He gets ostracized by the other cops. A very gritty film, again, shot on the streets of New York. Sidney Lumet, Al Pacino combination. They've done several films together. They're all great. This is classic 70s filmmaking, where you go out there, tell the story, show the lifestyle of these particular people, and it's so realistic and gritty. I love that. Number three, his best performance, not necessarily the best movie out, is Dog Day Afternoon from 1975, again with Sidney Lumet at the helm. Great supporting cast with Charles Durning as the cop trying to negotiate on the street with him. Here, get him some pizzas and do this. He's trying to do everything he can to make sure nobody gets killed. And then you got John Cazale in there, who is nuts, and he's telling Sonny, he's saying, remember, if things go wrong, we're supposed to shoot everybody. And he's half like Brian said, nothing ever goes right in a bank robbery. And the last person you want to take with you is John Cazale, a complete lunatic. His best performance, another gritty role, the Attica thing. And daring for its time, like you guys had mentioned, the dialogue, the negotiations, the phone calls. he's picking up. He knows who's on the other line, and they're sort of negotiating back and forth. We'll do this. He sends one lady out. There's the whole lack of air conditioning. It's the hottest day in the city. People are taking their clothes off in the restroom, and the media circus out front, helicopters, snipers. I mean, it has it all. It's just a fantastic flick. And this was a tough Oscar race, if you remember, 1975. Neither Nicholson or Pacino had won yet. They're both, everybody knows they're up and coming. They're the best actors out there. Pacino's coming off of films like The Godfather 1 and 2. He's coming off of Serpico. He hasn't won. Rumor is this is the one that they're going to give it to him. And then there's Jack Nicholson, who's done Five Easy Pieces, The Last Detail, and Chinatown. He hasn't won yet. So it's a showdown between these two in 75. And Jack Nicholson wins the Oscar. And justifiably, you could argue that it could have been Al Pacino's very easily. It was that close a race. It may have been one of the closest Oscar races in history, as far as I'm concerned. They never give you the ballot of how close it was, but I suspect this was a dead heat, as far as I'm concerned. Number 2 is The Godfather, the first Godfather from 1972, the up-and-coming Michael Corleone, as a soldier who's outside the family, like you guys mentioned. And once Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando, is shot, he's the guy that's going to get the retribution to take vengeance on his father's assassination attempt. And he does so. He has to go to Italy for a year to lay low so everything quiets down and the other 5 families are satisfied. Then he comes back. He actually has a marriage over there, which is short-lived. We all know about that. And then he comes back. He's the head of the family. And you can just see the difference in the character. And Pacino's responsible for this. It's sort of this quiet, unassuming soldier kind of guy. And slowly but surely, more power. He actually relishes in the power. And you can see it in his whole body structure and the way he carries himself, that he's now the man in charge. And of course, Godfather 2 and 3 would follow, where he really ascends to the ladder of the Don. So that made my number 2. Now we're down to the big one, number 1. This will be interesting to see where we're at here. JJ, what do you have as your top Pacino flick?
Number 1 Pacino flick I picked was Godfather Part 2. And the reason why I picked Godfather Part 2 is he is now, I mean, the way that he is now, you know, he is trying so hard to be like his dad and negotiate family with all this stuff going on. And it's really, he's trying to hold it all together and to move along, but things are falling apart around him. And he doesn't really even pick up on it until, you know, later, you know, like he finds out that Kate went and had the abortion and things like that. And when he gets it's such a great character flick of his. And when it finally, and then in the end, it leads to him actually, you know, taking out one of his own family members. And this is kind of how far he has gone down, you know, into this life. And the way that his character development was in this movie, it was just phenomenal. And he is mesmerizing to watch in this role. Yes, he was Godfather, but now we're moving this to another level. Right. And his performance of, you know, his interactions with, I'm blanking, but his interactions with the other guy, the other mobster guy that he kept having throughout the whole movie. And that part, okay, I'm blanking his name, but
Roth,
Hyman Roth. Thank you.
Hyman Roth, yeah.
Hyman Roth, yeah. His interactions with Hyman Roth, and how he's trying to hold that all together, and it was just it was an amazing film for me and a performance, and that's why I gave it the number 1 spot.
Perfect, Doc.
Gonna say the number 1 movie I had for Pacino is The Godfather Part 2. So that's the same as JJ's. Yeah, this the number 1 is number 2 because you're introduced to Michael here, and
yeah.
But the way that this character really takes off, the arc on this character here in number 2 is pretty serious, man. It's like there's a learning curve. There's a whole bunch of different things. And yeah, he's taking over the family business. Really, he's taking over for his dad. He's a guy that you didn't see coming maybe in number one because it was going to be Sonny's until things went south for Sonny. But it turned out to be Michael's family. And there is a lot of different things that go on in this movie. And his character progresses pretty quickly in this movie in one sense, that he knows that he's the guy as it unfolds throughout the movie and stuff like that. And the story behind it. The writing is fantastic, right? I mean, this is, you can see this, especially in those first two flicks, man. It's pretty high-end stuff here. This is as high-end as you get. It's a beautiful movie to watch for like a crappy subject, you know? I mean, let's face it, you know, these guys are killers and mobsters and everything else and 1 and 2. These movies are really awesome. Pacino's character this is one of the best characters in the history of film, man. And this is his peak as that character to me. So number 2 is Pacino's number 1.
Very good. Brian.
Okay, Doc knows this. I cheated. I went ahead and put Godfather 1 and 2 at my number 1 because it's the same role, right? Even though I thought the character arc was a little bit more interesting in number 2, for a lot of reasons that JJ said, is that you know, going from war hero to ascending to the head of his family is one thing, but then like to go from there to basically, I believe they probably call it familicide, killing one of your own family members. That's like that extra step that he took, and I thought the arc was much more interesting in the second one than even the first one. The first one was good, but the arc in the second one was much more interesting to see, because there still were parts of you that believed that Michael still was inherently that soldier that was sitting at the wedding table at the beginning of 1, and 2 did everything to erase that from our psyche at that point. So I thought that Pacino did a great job with it. So 2 gets a little bit of the edge, but since it's the same character, I went ahead and put them both there at number 1 for playing Michael Corleone. So I guess you could say 1, 2, 3, but I'm not counting 3.
No, none of us counted.
I don't know what that was.
3. I kind of like 3. I think it's underrated in a way, but it's comparing it to the other 2, which are monumental. So it's hard to do. But anyway, my number 1 is The Godfather Part 2. Again, from the beginning until the end of that film, when he has to deal with his marriage crumbling and his brother betraying him and how he's going to resolve that issue, the whole Hyman Roth situation, the Frankie Flowers situation where, you know, he's sent the Rosado brothers, or did he? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff there. There's the stuff with the senator. Remember the senator who he has?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He has all these things on his plate at once. And how is he going to have his respect and show that he's still the man in control and live with himself? I mean, it's a tough act to deal with. And at the end, Coppola does something interesting at the very end of Godfather 2, where he flashes back to the first Michael that we see in the with the birthday cake, waiting for the father to come in.
Right.
They're all around the table, and he's still in the uniform, and he looks like an innocent play. And then they cut, once the father comes in, to him sitting there as now the end of 2, where he's had his brother off and divorce and all that. And he's sitting there alone, pensive, with the leaves blowing. And again, it's written on his face. Al Pacino, he's done some dastardly things to get where he's at. And the saga continues, because there's a lot more to come in 3, as we all know. But it's just an incredible performance. It's tough to say Dog Day or The Godfather, which is better, but
yeah, I that's why I said, Godfather, being the iconic film that it was, is what kept it at number, kept it up there for me. But I mean,
I agree.
If you went strictly by performances, I would have to go. I'd switch the 2. I'd have Dog Day at number 1.
I weighed performance, the cloud of the movie, just the whole impact of the character, and I tried to combine them and come up with a list. And that's why The Godfather 2 and then 1, and then they both exceed Dog Day for that reason only. They're better films in the history of cinema, and yet that Dog Day Afternoon performance is the one that if I had to rate which is Al Pacino's best performance, that would be the one I would point to right there.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
I
think we're all kind of in agreement. We all see that the same way. We had some different lists. Nobody had. What did we leave out of his resume? Nobody had Scarecrow, which is a movie of his from the early 70s. I
had Serpico was on my honorable mention, and so was the Insider. That was my two.
Yeah, mine were the Insider. I didn't have Glengarry. That was my honorable mention. Glengarry, Glenn Ross, Carlito's Way, and Scent of a Woman. Those were the four that I.
My honorable mention would have been Heat, Scent of a Woman, and another one I was also I also like a performance of his. It's kind of really obscure as Author.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I actually saw that in the movies when it came out. I didn't care for it, but that was just me back in '82.
Yeah, I had Scent of a Woman too, and Justice for All on my honorables. And
I agree with Brian. The reason I didn't have Scent of a Woman is purely on Chris O'Donnell.
Well, yeah, and that film for Pacino is, I kind of felt in a way with that particular movie that his Oscar, I was like, I mean, he didn't. I liked the performance. I guess I did, but a lot of it was just him yelling and screaming. I kind of felt at some points, and he had all this stuff in there with the way he acted, and I know it just didn't. It never really. It was he got the Oscar for it, and it was decent. But that was the same year Glengarry Glen Ross came out as well, and I enjoy. I would put that one much higher on my list in particular. So it's just one of those things where it's kind of like. I think it's like, well, you got the Oscar for this. That's just kind of like, I've always felt about that particular movie.
That's the way the Oscars work. They always make up for it later for the body of work when they screw up the first time.
Oh, yeah.
They did it with Paul Newman in a way, although I like The Color of Money. He should have won for The Verdict. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's happened to others. Other guys or women that have been passed over, and eventually they get their award. So, all right, cool. We're going to wrap this up. Great job by everybody. I enjoyed it. Everybody out there, we'll be back again in 2 weeks. We're going to do Clint Eastwood as actor next time. So for AYBL Maine, Brian, Doc, JJ, 22 Explosive Hits, please leave comments. Sub these guys up. Let us know what your 10 favorite Al Pacino films are. And until next time, we'll see you later. Take care. Bye.